Well, good morning, Rovers. I'm here in the vegetable garden, and it's a real pleasure to share this with you because over the years, Mrs. Rover and I, well, we've had 3 homesteads, which meant establishing 3 vegetable gardens from scratch. And this, by far, has been the most productive vegetable garden in the first year, because your first year garden is notoriously difficult to establish because generally you're breaking sod, and we don't like to bring a lot of inputs into the garden, so you're working with nature in so many ways to establish it. So I just want to share with you how we established this garden from scratch. We'll take a look at what it looks like now, and then we'll be doing an update in a few weeks when it comes to harvest time. That's not to say we're not already eating from the garden. We are. We're getting a lot of greens, broccoli. We're about to start harvesting beans today, and we're also having snow peas for the last several weeks. So it's been a delicious sort of adventure for us here at Rover's Rest. And like I said, we've just honed our skills over the years to be able to get such a productive garden in the first year. Anyway, here's to sharing that knowledge with you. Well, the garden actually started about 9 months ago. We had a farmer come in almost right away and spread a little bit of manure on the area that we would have the garden and run the chickens. Then we laid down some cardboard, and then on top of that, I got some used lumber wraps and I laid them over top, and we left it like that right through the whole winter and just revealed it, well, this early summer. Well, while the garden was covered with that cardboard and fabric, the worms came up, especially in early spring, and other bacteria, and broke down the sod and also broke down the manure that was laying on top. So there's all kinds of worms and activity happening in the soil, and that's beneficial to what we want. Well, the next step was to lay down just a thin layer of manure. Now this manure, it's about 8 months old, and it was pretty green when we got it. It came straight from the barn, and it's been just laying over winter, so it didn't really have a great amount of time to break down, but that's all right, and it's pretty clumpy because we're covering it. And when it's covered, then the worms are going to come up, because we still have about 4 weeks at this time before the plant out time. So in that time, the worms are going to work their magic on that manure and break it down for us. Now you need to hold this fabric down, and we live in a pretty high wind area, so you use these staples, and I'll put a link for both the fabric and the staples in the video description if you're interested where we got them. Now this is the finished garden. Now I've put down these strips of OSB that were left over from the building of the shop last year. You don't have to put them down, but I put them down in part for ballast to help the material stay flat on the ground, but also just to walk on. Those are going to be the pathways in between the plantings. Now this little section in the corner, that's a heavily manured area, and then I've covered it with these wood chips from my boat building friend, and that's for the tomatoes. Okay, so today's project is to burn some holes in the landscape fabric of the garden, and to do that I'm using an old piece of metal roofing, and I've shaped it and bent it and bolted it onto just a tuna tin, the ubiquitous tuna tin. All right, let me just show you. I have to make a second one anyway. Okay, so the first order of business is we need to flatten this out so that we can bend it onto the tin. Put on some hearing protection, and let me see. There we go. Okay, so that's pretty good. Just bend it. Good. Now the tuna tin. So it'll sit on there like that. Just punch a hole through it. Then okay, so now we'll drill a hole. And the hole, you just want to make the same size as whatever bolt you have. In this case, I'm just using this. This is way bigger than I need. I think this is 5/16, but you know, 1/4 inch, 3/16 would be fine. Now, get my tin snip. This isn't absolutely necessary, but I just want to trim this. Okay, now that it's trimmed, just put your bolt through. There we go. It's all done. Now we just have to heat this up in the barbecue and then melt the landscape fabric. All right, let's get going.
Well, we had picked a pretty windy day to do this on, but we did manage to recover all the little bits of plastic that were blowing around. Very important to do so. Now, as you can see, the finished product, and it's ready for planting. Now, a couple of weeks before I put the fabric down, just in the corner of the garden, I erected a little trellis and I improved the soil by adding a bit of manure and a bit of peat moss, mixed it all together, and planted the snow peas. Now, the snow peas, they don't actually mind a bit of cool weather. In fact, they seem to like it. Now, a lot of the beans and the peas, they really benefit from soaking them at least for 24 hours before planting. Well, now, let's let the garden speak for itself. Well, the best way to help rovers rest is by liking, subscribing, and watching our videos, and of course, sharing them on your social media. So until next time, rovers, thanks for watching.